You are listening to the Think Brick Australia podcast. Think Brick Australia represents the clay, brick and paver manufacturers of Australia. Brick by brick, our podcast will discuss technical information and architectural case studies with special guests. I'm your host, Elizabeth McIntyre, the CEO of Think Brick Australia. Well, everyone, we have made it through 2022, and on today's Tech Talk, we're actually going to do a bit of a countdown as to the top 5 most popular Tech Talks for 2022. And to help me in this recap, I welcome our engineering lead, Jack Gill, to the conversation.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Looking forward to a bit of a Christmas countdown.
A Christmas countdown for clay brick. Here we go. The 5th most popular Tech Talk for 2022 was all about flooring.
It was.
Brick floors. It's floored me, but it didn't floor our audience.
No, Elizabeth, that was a great episode earlier from February this year. So talking a bit about how we can use bricks for flooring applications. So look, for all our listeners, a bit of a quick recap on that one. It's important to realize that, we see bricks as an external walling material a lot of the time, but we can get a bit creative with how we use these. And if we look at the properties of bricks, the fact that they're low maintenance, the fact that they're durable, they've got excellent thermal qualities, it makes them excellent materials for flooring. So provided that we look at the qualities of bricks, in terms of their higher mass and their higher weight, we can design some great internal areas. We've seen in our awards in the past some great kitchens and living areas.
I love it for the kitchens because, that's high traffic. And as well, you don't lose any headroom because you've already got that 110 millimeter thickness on the floor, so that's even better.
Exactly. And I think just speaking to the idea of, just the versatility with all the different laying patterns we've got with bricks, you can really make your living and your internal areas shine. It's a great episode to, get into that space and think about how you can style your house moving into 2023.
So if you're thinking floors, think brick. All right. Number 4 was actually our episode around standard brick sizing around the world. And Jack, what are some of the things that we were illuminated on during this episode?
Yeah, this was a really great, I for one found this episode really fascinating. Helping with doing some of the research. But I think what we noticed was that particularly around the world, if we look at climate, a lot of our building products actually respond to that. So for example, when we're looking at countries with cooler climates and colder climates, for example, China and Russia, we might actually see thicker bricks. So, in China, they have a standard brick thickness of 150 millimeters. And in Russia, it's just slightly thicker than ours at 120 millimeters. But it's also a really interesting historical episode because it talks a little bit about how bricks have evolved in Australia from when we used to use the imperial system and how that influenced the common standard dimensions. Obviously moving through into the mid-1960s to actually have that standard 230 by 110 by 76 brick that we have today. And obviously looking forward into the future, we now know that our manufacturers that we represent here at Think Brick Australia can make bricks in realistically any sort of shape and size they want. So it kind of speaks to this idea of the evolution of how bricks have been seen by people across the world.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned in that particular episode, but it always does amaze me when I go to the US and even to Europe, just how small those bricks are compared to our Australian brick size. All right, we're now down to the 3rd most popular episode for our Think Brick Tech Talks, and that is house rating schemes. And I think this was so popular because there are so many acronyms and so many different schemes that you have to know. And I know Callista did a great job on this episode, but Jack, take us through a couple of the recaps.
Yeah, exactly right, Elizabeth. I completely agree with you. I think moving into the world we're in now with net zero and reducing our energy footprint, it's been a great episode to just get a quick recap on what you should know as a homeowner or as a business owner as well for looking about how you can be more sustainable. So in terms of the house rating schemes out there, there's a combination of what we know as compulsory schemes, which we have to use and we have to follow to meet the requirements in our NCC, our National Construction Code. Of these, the first one to be aware of is the NATHERS, or the Nationwide Housing Energy Rating Scheme, which is used in the NCC as their deemed to satisfy pathway. And in 2021, we had about 94% of building approvals using this. And this gives you a rating out of 10 stars, with 10 being the most efficient. And what we're actually seeing in NCC 2022 is an increase to 7 stars. So the way that this scheme works is by using different software packages, such as those Callista mentioned, such as Accurate, First Rate 5, to accurately calculate the energy footprint of your home, given the different parameters that you'll put inside that. Following on from NATHERS, we're obviously based here in New South Wales, and in our home state, we have BASIX, which is the Built Sustainability Index. And this is compulsory for all residential developments in New South Wales. And it works on the same principle. Essentially, you put in your appliances, you'll put in your footprint, you'll put in your floor plan, orientation, and your different building components. And that will essentially give you a BASIX certificate, which we can use to meet the requirements within the NCC. Following on from that, we have a few sort of less popular but still really important schemes, including the Green Star rating, the Victorian Residential Efficiency Scorecard, and NEIGHBOURS, which has been used for commercial buildings. And again, I encourage anyone who wants to find out more about those to tune into that episode and see what they're all about and where we're seeing them being used across Australia.
Jack, I think that's a great summary, and particularly with NEIGHBOURS and BASIX, what's important for our listeners to appreciate is that these have had some changes with the NCC 2022 that has been released, and we've also got an episode on that, but it provides a great pathway in making very complex things very simple. All right, we're down now to the second most popular Tech Talk episode.
Getting down to the thick of it now.
And it is actually around brick maintenance, which is a little bit of an oxymoron because, as you know, there's not a lot of maintenance when it comes to brick. But what are sort of the key things outside of that, Jack, that we need to know?
Yeah, what I will say to that, Elizabeth, it was a short episode for the reasons you've mentioned. But obviously, you know, we want to make sure our bricks really shine and last the test of time. So I think the most important thing to recognize with this episode is that, you know, if you have any staining issues, a lot of the time with bricks, because they're made of natural materials, we can get some reactions from the environment, particularly if we're talking about excessive rain or if we're talking about using chemicals on our bricks. And so, you know, for these different types of stains, as an example, efflorescence, which is where we get our salts that are contained within our bricks migrating to the surface. A lot of the time it can look a bit unsightly and, you know, people do tend to freak out a little bit. You know, your brick home is your pride and joy. But a lot of the time maintenance with bricks is very easy. And in this case, you know, you can get rid of a lot of efflorescence in most cases with a simple dry brushing with a stiff nylon brush. So again, if anyone that's listening to this episode has any concerns or questions about brick maintenance, we definitely redirect you to that episode and definitely check it out to find out how you can ensure your bricks are shining for years to come.
And also, just a sub point on that, we do have a website with all of our accredited brick cleaners on it. And that's if you do have those more organic stains like manganese, acid burn, and a few other stains. Please make sure you call a professional for that. And Think Brick has a number of accredited brick cleaners right across the country that can help you with that. Okay, well, here it is. A brick roll, please. Brick colours was our most popular Tech Talk episode, and I'm not surprised because so many architects and designers talk to me about how many brick colours are available, and it is something that I think there's a perception that there's not, but there's a multitude, in fact, over 1,000 different colours that bricks come in.
Yeah, it's a fantastic episode, Elizabeth. And I think it really speaks to what we've seen in our 2022 Think Brick Awards. It's been dominated by seeing all of those different colours come out to play and really seeing what architects and building designers are doing with these different colours. And I think it's really important to know, you know, Anthony Zhang from Barrel Bricks came on that episode and did an incredible job of explaining that the manufacturing process of bricks is, again, almost like baking a cake. And frequent listeners will know that that's an analogy that I love to use, but it's the same with brick colours. We can add different components and different ingredients to get different colours and different finishes on our bricks. And it's not just dependent purely on these different ingredients and different, you know, materials. It also depends on the soak temperature, how long the bricks spend in the kiln, the actual atmosphere of the kiln itself, as well as obviously the raw materials and the location of the raw clay that's going into these bricks. And Australia's obviously blessed. We've got a lot of different resources and we can get a lot of different colours from our clays to give all those wonderful colours you were talking about, Elizabeth.
And that's a great wrap up. And just for our listeners, if you wanted the countdown again, if you haven't listened to these episodes, you might want to check out brick floors, standard brick sizes around the world, house rating schemes, brick maintenance, and brick colours. And if you do want to colour your world and your building, think brick. Thank you, Jack, for joining me today.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and I'm looking forward to doing more of these in 2023.
And have a Merry Brickmas from the rest of us here at Think Brick. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please follow, rate, and review our podcast. We are always looking for new ways to think brick. If you have an idea of what you'd like to hear about, there's a link in our show notes to let us know.